Sometimes the person you trust most is the one sharpening the knife behind your back. Sometimes family isn't blood. It's betrayal dressed up in holiday sweaters. Sometimes the truth is the cruelest gift you can give. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. My name is Kira Vale. I am 32 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. This is the story of how Christmas morning became the day I learned that revenge, when served with precision and grace, tastes sweeter than any holiday dessert. The rain hadn't stopped falling in 3 days when I pulled into my sister's driveway on Christmas Eve. The Pacific Northwest had wrapped itself in its usual winter blanket of grey skies and perpetual drizzle. But inside the Tudor-style house, warm lights spilled from every window. Pine garlands draped the front porch, and I could already hear the familiar chaos of family gathering, children's laughter, the clatter of dishes, my sister Maya's voice calling out instructions to anyone within earshot. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the scene through the rain-streaked windshield. This house had been my refuge for the past 2 years, ever since my divorce finalized and I'd moved back to Portland to start over. Maya had welcomed me with open arms. Her husband Derek had been nothing but kind, and their 2 kids, Emma and Jake, had adopted me as their favorite aunt. It was the closest thing to home I'd felt in years. But tonight, something felt different. Maybe it was the way Derek had been acting lately. Too friendly, too attentive, too eager to help with things I didn't need help with. Maybe it was the way his eyes lingered just a second too long when he thought no one was looking. I'd tried to dismiss it, chalked it up to my own paranoia after everything I'd been through with my ex-husband. But that nagging feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. I grabbed my overnight bag and the pile of wrapped gifts from the back seat, then made a dash for the front door. Maya opened it before I could knock, her face breaking into the kind of smile that had been getting me through difficult times since we were kids. Kira, finally. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. I was starting to think you'd changed your mind. Traffic was a nightmare, I said, stepping into the warmth of the entryway. Something about a jackknife semi on I-5. Derek. Maya called toward the kitchen. Kira's here. Derek appeared in the doorway, tea towel in hand, wearing the kind of cable-knit sweater that made him look like he'd stepped out of a Christmas catalogue. He was handsome in an understated way tall, broad-shouldered with the kind of easy smile that had probably been charming women since high school. At 35, he'd kept himself in good shape, and I could see why Maya had fallen for him 10 years ago. "Hey, Kira," he said, crossing the room to take my bags. "Let me get these for you." His hand brushed mine as he took the bags, and he held the contact just a moment too long. There it was again, that feeling. The way his fingers lingered. The way his eyes met mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Thanks," I said, pulling my hand away quickly. Maya was already heading toward the kitchen, talking about dinner plans and tomorrow's schedule. "I hope you're hungry, Derek's been cooking all day. You know how he gets around the holidays." I followed her into the kitchen, where the counters were covered with evidence of serious meal preparation. Derek had always been the cook in their relationship, and he took pride in creating elaborate holiday feasts. Tonight was no exception. There were pots simmering on every burner, the oven was full, and the island was covered with ingredients for tomorrow's Christmas dinner. "It smells incredible in here," I said, and I meant it. Whatever Derek's faults, the man could cook. Derek's famous herb-crusted prime rib, Maya said, beaming with pride. "He's been perfecting the recipe for years." Derek came up behind Maya and slipped his arms around her waist, kissing her neck. "Only the best for my girls," he said, and his eyes found mine over Maya's shoulder. The way he said girls made my skin crawl. The evening passed in a blur of family traditions. We ate Derek's incredible dinner, played board games with the kids, and watched A Christmas Story while drinking hot chocolate spiked with bourbon. It should have been perfect. It would have been perfect if not for the way Derek kept finding excuses to be near me. When I got up to refill my drink, he was suddenly there, reaching for the same bottle. When I helped clear the dishes, he appeared at my elbow, his hand touching my lower back as he reached around me for a plate. When Maya went upstairs to put the kids to bed, he lingered in the living room, making small talk about my work, my apartment, my life. You know, he said, settling onto the couch beside me, closer than necessary. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I stiffened. What do you mean? Just that you've been through so much with the divorce and everything. Starting over can't be easy. His voice was soft, concerned, but there was something underneath it that made my stomach turn. If you ever need anything at all, I want you to know you can come to me. I stood up quickly, putting distance between us. That's very kind, Derek, but I'm doing fine. Are you? He stood too, taking a step closer. Because sometimes I get the feeling that you're lonely, that you're looking for something. The way he said it left no doubt about what he thought I was looking for. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. I think you're misreading the situation. Am I? He took another step closer, and I could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying. Because I've seen the way you look at me, Kira, and I felt the connection between us. There is no connection, I said firmly. You're my sister's husband. Maya doesn't have to know. His voice was barely above a whisper now. She's so busy with the kids, with her job. She doesn't pay attention to what I need anymore. I felt like I was going to be sick. Derek, stop. This is not happening. Just think about it, he said, reaching out to touch my arm. We could be good together. I could take care of you the way you deserve to be taken care of. I jerked away from his touch, just as Maya's voice echoed down the stairs. Kids are finally asleep. Derek, can you help me get the Santa presents out of the closet? Derek's expression shifted instantly, the predatory look disappearing behind his usual easy smile. Of course, honey, he called back then. To me, quietly. Think about what I said, Kira. We don't have to be lonely. He walked upstairs like nothing had happened, leaving me standing in the living room, shaking with rage and disgust. My sister's husband had just propositioned me in her own home, while she was upstairs putting their children to bed. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. I wanted to march upstairs and tell Maya everything, but I knew how that would go. Derek was charming, persuasive, and he'd been laying groundwork for months, probably years. He'd spin it as a misunderstanding. Or worse, he'd make it seem like I was the one who had come on to him. Maya would be torn between her husband and her sister, and in the end, she'd probably choose him. She had too much to lose not to. So I did what I always did when I was upset. I went for a walk. The rain had stopped, and the neighborhood was quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Christmas lights twinkled in windows, and I could see families gathered around dining tables and living rooms, celebrating the holiday the way it was supposed to be celebrated. I walked for an hour, trying to figure out what to do. By the time I got back to the house, the lights were off downstairs, and I could hear Maya and Derek talking quietly in their bedroom. I crept up to the guest room and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I must have eventually fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, it was Christmas morning, and I could hear the kids thundering down the stairs. I checked my phone 7:30 a.m. I threw on my robe and went downstairs, where Emma and Jake were already tearing into their presents, while Maya and Derek watched from the couch, coffee mugs in hand. Merry Christmas, sleepyhead, Maya said, patting the cushion beside her. Coffee's fresh. I settled next to my sister, accepting the mug she handed me, and try to pretend everything was normal. Derek was playing the perfect father and husband, helping the kids with their new toys, kissing Maya's forehead, acting like he hadn't tried to seduce his sister-in-law 12 hours earlier. Aunt Kira. Emma ran over with a new art set, her face glowing with excitement. "Look what Santa brought me." "That's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, pulling her onto my lap. "You'll have to make me a picture." "I will. I'm going to make you the most beautiful picture ever." The innocence in her voice made my heart ache. These kids deserved better than a father who would betray their mother. Maya deserved better than a husband who would cheat on her with her own sister. The morning passed in a haze of gift opening and excited chatter. I went through the motions, smiling and laughing at the right moments. But my mind was elsewhere. I kept catching Derek watching me, his eyes holding a question I refused to answer after lunch. Maya announced that she was going to take the kids to her mother's house for their annual Christmas visit. "You're welcome to come," she said to me. "But I know Mom can be a bit much." "I think I'll stay here," I said. "I have some work to catch up on." "Derek's staying too," Maya said. "He's got that presentation to finish for Monday." I felt the trap closing around me. Derek had probably orchestrated this whole thing, found a way to get Maya and the kids out of the house so he could corner me again. But I wasn't going to run. I was tired of being afraid, tired of being the victim in other people's games. "I'll be fine," I said. "Go enjoy your visit." Maya kissed me goodbye. And then she was gone, loading the kids into the car and driving away, leaving me alone with Derek for the first time since last night's encounter. He waited exactly 5 minutes before making his move. "Kira," he said, appearing in the doorway of the guest room where I was pretending to work on my laptop. "I hoped we could talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, not looking up from my screen. "I think there is." He came into the room, closing the door behind him. "I think we need to address what's happening between us." "What's happening between us?" I said, finally looking at him. "Is that you're married to my sister, and you're making inappropriate advances toward me." "Maya and I have problems," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "She's distant, cold. We barely touch anymore. I'm not happy, Kira." "Then divorce her," I said. "Don't drag me into your marital problems. It's not that simple. The kids, the house, her family, it would be messy. But we could have something on the side, something just for us." The casualness with which he discussed betraying my sister made my blood boil. "You want me to help you cheat on Maya?" "I want us to be happy," he said. "Both of us. You're lonely. I'm lonely. We could solve each other's problems." "My loneliness is not your concern," I said, "and I would never, ever betray my sister." His expression hardened. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Miss Perfect with your fancy job and your independent life. But you're here, aren't you? Living in your sister's shadow, depending on her for family, the connection." "Get out," I said. "You need me more than you're willing to admit," he continued. "And I'm offering you something real, something that could make us both happy," I said. "Get out." "Fine," he said, standing up. "But think about it, Kira. Think about what your life looks like without this family, without Maya, without me. Because if you keep pushing me away, you might find yourself very alone." The threat was clear, and it made my hands shake with rage. He was essentially telling me that if I didn't sleep with him, he'd find a way to turn Maya against me. It was manipulation at its finest, and I was sure he'd use similar tactics on other women. After he left, I sat in the guest room, my mind racing. I thought about calling Maya, about telling her what was happening. But I knew Derek was right about one thing: it would be messy. Maya would be forced to choose between her husband and her sister, and she had too much to lose to choose me. But I couldn't let him get away with this. I couldn't let him continue to manipulate and threaten women, to use his position as a husband and father to prey on vulnerable people. There had to be another way. I opened my laptop and did what I did best. I researched. Derek worked for a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. But I knew he'd also been doing freelance work on the side. Maya had mentioned it casually, how he'd been taking on extra projects to help with the kids' college funds. I started with his LinkedIn profile, then moved to his company website. Then, to social media. Derek was careful online, but not careful enough. I found his Twitter account, his Instagram, his Facebook page. He kept his personal life separate from his professional one. But there were cracks in the facade. It took me 3 hours to find what I was looking for. A woman named Jessica Chen had been tagged in several of Derek's photos over the past year. Always in professional settings, conferences, networking events, business dinners. She was attractive, probably in her late 20s, with long dark hair and a warm smile. But what caught my attention was the pattern of their interactions. Derek had been commenting on her posts consistently for months. Always something professional but tinged with personal interest. Great presentation today. You looked fantastic at the conference. Would love to grab coffee and discuss that project. The kind of comments that could be explained away as professional networking, but felt like something more. I dug deeper, creating fake social media accounts to follow Jessica's friends, to see her posts that weren't public. It was a skill I'd learned during my divorce, when I'd had to become my own private investigator to uncover my ex-husband's affairs. And then I found it. A Facebook post. From 3 months ago. Jessica at a restaurant with a man whose face was partially obscured by shadows, but whose build and clothing I recognized. The caption read, "Finally found someone who appreciates fine dining as much as I do. #blessed, #new beginnings," I screenshotted. Everything, then kept digging. Jessica's Instagram stories revealed more glimpses of expensive dinners, weekend getaways, intimate moments with a man who was clearly not her husband, because according to her Facebook, she was single. But the real bombshell came when I found her private Instagram account, accessible through a mutual friend's account that I'd infiltrated. There, posted just 2 weeks ago, was a photo that made my blood run cold. Jessica was holding a positive pregnancy test, her face glowing with happiness. The caption read, "Baby makes 3. Can't wait to start this new chapter with my love. #baby surprise, #family goals, #blessed." My hands were shaking as I screenshotted the image. Derek wasn't just cheating on Maya. He was about to become a father with another woman. He had a whole second life that my sister knew nothing about. I sat back in my chair, pieces falling into place. Derek's sudden interest in me wasn't about attraction or loneliness. It was about control. He was building a harem of women, keeping his options open, making sure he had backup plans for every scenario. He'd probably done this before, probably had other women stashed away in different compartments of his life. The predatory behavior, the manipulation, the threats, it all made sense now. Derek wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a serial manipulator who used his charm and position to exploit women. And he thought I was going to be his next victim. I spent the rest of the afternoon building my case. I documented everything, every inappropriate comment, every threatening message, every piece of evidence I could find about his affair with Jessica. I cross-referenced dates, looking for times when Derek had told Maya he was working late, or traveling for business. Almost every one of those dates corresponded to activity on Jessica's social media. Maya and the kids returned home around 6, full of stories about Christmas dinner at Grandma's house, and the chaos that always ensued when the entire extended family got together. Derek played the perfect husband, asking about everyone's day, helping with the kids' new toys, acting like he hadn't spent the afternoon trying to coerce me into an affair. "How was your quiet afternoon?" Maya asked, settling next to me on the couch. "Productive," I said. "I got a lot of work done." Derek caught my eye from across the room, and I saw the question there. He was wondering if I'd thought about his offer, if I'd come to my senses and decided to play along with his game. I smiled at him, the kind of smile that could mean anything, and watched as relief flickered across his face. He thought he'd won. He thought I was going to be another Jessica, another woman willing to be compartmentalized and controlled. He had no idea what was coming. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the guest room and crafted my message. I'd found Jessica's email address through her work website. She was a graphic designer for a small firm across town. I created a new email account, something untraceable, and composed the most important message I'd ever written. "Dear Jessica," I wrote, "I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to you because I believe you deserve to know the truth about Derek Martinez. I am his sister-in-law, and I have recently discovered that he has been living a double life. Derek is married to my sister Maya, and they have 2 children together, Emma and Jake. Based on social media evidence, I believe he has been in a relationship with you for several months, and I've seen that you are expecting a child. I want you to know that Derek has recently made inappropriate advances toward me, and I believe he is a serial manipulator who preys on women. I have documented evidence of your relationship with him, and I am willing to share this information with you so that you can make informed decisions about your future. Please know that I am not writing this to hurt you, but because I believe you deserve to know the truth about the man you are involved with. If you would like to speak, please let me know. I understand this must be shocking news, and I am here to support you in whatever way I can." I attached selected screenshots enough to prove that I wasn't lying, but not so many that it would seem like I was stalking her. Then I took a deep breath and hit send. The response came faster than I'd expected. Jessica wrote back within 2 hours, and her message was brief. "Can you call me? This is my number." I stepped out onto the back porch, where the rain had started again, and dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Are you really his sister-in-law?" "Yes," I said. "I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this." "He told me he was divorced," she said. "He said his ex-wife was bitter and trying to keep him from seeing his kids. He said that's why he couldn't introduce me to them yet." My heart broke for her. Derek had crafted the perfect lie, one that would explain away his unavailability while painting himself as the victim. "Jessica, I'm looking at Christmas photos from today. Derek, Maya, and their kids. They're very much married." I heard her start to cry. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. "I'm pregnant with his baby." "I know," I said gently. "I saw your Instagram post. Congratulations, by the way. I know this is terrible timing, but you're going to be a mother. That's something to celebrate. Even if the circumstances are complicated. What am I going to do?" she asked. "I left my last boyfriend for him. I've been planning a future with him. I thought we were going to get married. I can't tell you what to do," I said, "but I can tell you that my sister doesn't know about you. She doesn't know about any of this. And Derek tried to coerce me into an affair yesterday. You're not the only woman he's manipulating." "Oh my God," she breathed. "Oh my God, what kind of person does this?" "A person who thinks he can control everyone around him," I said. "A person who thinks he's smarter than everyone else." We talked for another hour. Jessica told me about their relationship, how Derek had pursued her at a conference, how he'd slowly drawn her into his web of lies. She told me about the expensive dinners, the weekend getaways, the promises of a future together, She told me about the pregnancy, how happy she'd been, how she'd thought she'd finally found her person. What are you going to do? She asked finally. I'm going to tell my sister, I said. She deserves to know the truth. When? Tomorrow. I want to do it right. When the kids aren't around, she's going to need time to process this. Will you tell her about me? About the baby? Only. If you want me to, I said. This is your story to tell. I want her to know, Jessica said. I want her to know everything. Maybe if we work together, we can make sure he never does this to anyone else. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of the guest room and thought about Maya, my sister who had always been there for me, who had welcomed me into her home when I needed a place to heal. Maya who loved her husband, who trusted him, who was about to have her world shattered. I thought about Derek, sleeping peacefully in the next room, probably already planning his next move, his next victim. He thought he was untouchable, protected by his charm and his position, and his ability to manipulate the women around him. He was wrong. The next morning, Derek left early for what he claimed was a work emergency, something about a client presentation that couldn't wait. I watched him kiss Maya goodbye, watched him ruffle the kids' hair, watched him play the role of devoted husband and father one last time. I'll be back this evening, he told Maya. We can start planning our New Year's Eve party. After he left, I helped Maya clean up the breakfast dishes while the kids played with their new Christmas toys in the living room. It was a perfectly normal morning, domestic and peaceful, and I hated that I was about to destroy it. Maya, I said, setting down the dish towel, I need to talk to you about something important. She looked up from loading the dishwasher, and something in my tone must have alarmed her. What's wrong? Can we sit down and maybe send the kids upstairs to play? Kira, you're scaring me. I called the kids over and sent them upstairs with their new toys, promising we'd take them to the park later. Then I sat down at the kitchen table across from my sister, the woman who had been my best friend and biggest supporter for 32 years, Maya, I said. Derek made a pass at me on Christmas Eve. Her face went white. What? He told me he was unhappy in your marriage. He said you were distant and cold. He offered to have an affair with me. Mia's hands were shaking. That's not possible. Derek would never. He did, I said gently. And when I refused, he threatened me. He said if I didn't give him what he wanted, I might find myself very alone. I don't believe this, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Derek loves me. He loves our family. Maya, there's more. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken. Derek is having an affair with a woman named Jessica Chun, and she's pregnant with his child. Maya stared at the photos, her face cycling through disbelief, confusion, and finally, recognition. This is the woman from his company Christmas party, she said quietly. He introduced her as a colleague. She thought he was divorced, I said. He told her you were his bitter ex-wife who was keeping him from seeing his kids. Maya's composure cracked. She put her head in her hands and started to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I moved around the table and put my arms around her, holding her while she fell apart. How long? She asked through her tears. At least 6 months, probably longer. The baby? Due in the summer, based on her posts. Maya pulled away from me, wiping her eyes. I have to see this for myself. I have to know everything. I spent the next hour showing her every piece of evidence I'd collected. Every photo. Every message. Every lie Derek had told. Maya asked questions, connecting dots. Remembering nights when Derek had worked late. Weekends when he'd been called away on business. The conference in Seattle, she said suddenly. In October. He said it was a boring work thing, but he was gone for 3 days. And when he came back, he seemed different, happier. Jessica posted photos from Seattle that weekend. I said, she was at the same hotel. God, Maya breathed. How could I have been so stupid? You weren't stupid, I said firmly. You trusted your husband. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. What am I going to do? She asked. The kids, the house, everything we've built together. You're going to get through this, I said. One step at a time, but first, you need to decide what you want to do about Derek. Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photos on my phone. When she looked up, there was steel in her eyes. I want to confront him. I want to hear him try to explain this. Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back. There's already no going back, she said. My marriage is over. The only question is whether I'm going to let him keep lying to me. That evening, Derek came home with flowers and a bottle of wine. Playing the role of devoted husband, he kissed Maya hello, asked about her day, started talking about dinner plans. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought he was genuinely happy to be home. Derek, Maya said, her voice perfectly calm, I need to ask you about something. Of course, he said, settling onto the couch beside her. What's on your mind? Maya pulled out her phone and showed him the photo of Jessica with the pregnancy test. Derek's face went white, then red, then white again. I can explain, he said. Please do, Maya said. Explain to me how you can explain away getting another woman pregnant while you're married to me. Maya, listen. Explain to me how you can explain the hotel receipts, the restaurant charges, the weekend trips that were supposed to be for work. You don't understand. Explain to me how you can explain propositioning my sister while our children were sleeping upstairs. Derek looked at me, his eyes filled with rage and desperation. She's lying, he said. Kira's been flirting with me for months. She's jealous of what we have. She's trying to break us up. With what? Maya asked. Screenshots? Hotel receipts? A pregnant woman who thinks she's your girlfriend. I never touched your sister, Derek said. I would never. Stop, Maya said, standing up. Just stop. I've seen the evidence. I've spoken to Jessica. I know everything. Derek's face crumpled. Maya, please, I can explain everything. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, Maya said. You're a liar and a cheat and a manipulator. And you're done. You can't do this, Derek said, desperation creeping into his voice. The kids need me. You need me. We can work through this. The kids need a father who isn't a liar, Maya said. And I need a husband who isn't sleeping with other women. I made a mistake, Derek said. One mistake. It doesn't have to define our whole marriage. One mistake? Maya laughed bitterly. Derek, you've been living a double life for months. You got another woman pregnant. You tried to seduce my sister. This isn't one mistake. This is who you are. Derek turned to me, his mask finally slipping completely. This is your fault, he snarled. You couldn't leave well enough alone. You had to destroy everything. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just refused to be your next victim. You're going to regret this, he said. Both of you, you have no idea what you've done. The only thing I regret, Maya said, is not seeing through you sooner. Derek looked between us, realizing that his charm wasn't going to work this time, that his threats weren't going to silence us. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small and powerless. I want you out of this house. Maya said, Tonight, pack what you need and leave. My attorney will be in touch about the divorce. Maya, please, get out, she said. Before I call the police, Derek looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Maya's voice must have convinced him that she was serious. He went upstairs, and we could hear him moving around, packing his things. 20 minutes later, he came back down with a suitcase and a duffel bag. "This isn't over," he said to Maya. "I'm not going to let you destroy my relationship with my kids." "Your relationship with your kids is whatever you make it," Maya said. "But it's not going to be built on lies anymore." Derek looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with hatred. "I hope you're happy," he said. "I'm not happy," I said. "I'm sad for my sister. And I'm sad for your children. And I'm sad for Jessica and her baby. But I'm not sorry for telling the truth." After he left, Maya and I sat in the living room, listening to the rain against the windows. The house felt different without Derek's presence, smaller, but somehow cleaner. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now I figure out how to explain to my kids why their father doesn't live here anymore." Maya said, "Now I figure out how to be a single mother. Now I figure out how to start over." "You're not alone," I said. "I'm here. Whatever you need." "No," she said. "Thank you for everything, for having the courage to tell me the truth. I'm sorry I had to be the one to tell you." "I'm grateful it was you," she said. "Anyone else might have let me keep living the lie." Over the next few weeks, Maya and I worked together to untangle Derek's web of deception. We found evidence of 2 other women he'd been involved with, both of whom had believed his lies about being divorced. We found credit card statements showing expensive dinners and hotel stays that Maya had known nothing about. We found a secret bank account he'd been using to fund his affairs. Maya's attorney was thorough and ruthless. Derek tried to fight the divorce, tried to claim that Maya was being vindictive, that the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, he settled for supervised visitation with the kids and a modest financial settlement. Jessica decided to keep the baby and raise it as a single mother. She and Maya developed an unlikely friendship, bonded by their shared experience of being deceived by the same man. Maya even threw Jessica a baby shower, which was probably the most surreal event I'd ever attended. "It's not the baby's fault," Maya said when I asked her about it. "And Jessica's not the enemy here. We were both victims of the same predator." Derek tried to contact me several times in the months following the divorce, alternating between threats and attempts at seduction. I blocked his number, blocked his social media accounts, and eventually got a restraining order when he showed up at my apartment uninvited. "He's never going to stop," Maya said one day as we sat in her lawyer's office, filing yet another report about Derek's harassment. "He can't stand that we won." "We didn't win," I said. "We survived. There's a difference. But in a way, we had won. We'd exposed Derek for what he was, and we prevented him from doing the same thing to other women. We'd broken his pattern of manipulation and control. Maya flourished as a single mother in a way that surprised both of us. Without Derek's constant criticism and emotional manipulation, she became more confident, more decisive, more like the person she'd been before she married him. The kids adjusted better than we'd expected, probably because they were no longer living in a house filled with tension and lies. "I should have known," Maya said one evening as we watched the kids play in the backyard. "All those late nights, all those business trips, I should have known." "He was good at lying," I said. "That's what made him dangerous." "You knew though, you saw through him." "I had the advantage of not being married to him," I said, "and I'd been through it before. With my ex-husband, I knew the signs." "Do you think he'll ever change?" Maya asked. "No," I said. "People like Derek don't change. They just get better at hiding who they are." A year later, Maya was thriving in her new life. She'd gotten a promotion at work, started dating again, and even joined a support group for women who'd been through similar experiences. The kids were happy and healthy, and our family had grown closer through the ordeal. I often thought about that Christmas Eve when Derek had first made his move. If I'd stayed silent, if I'd been too afraid to speak up, he would have continued his pattern of manipulation and abuse. Jessica would have continued living a lie. Maya would have continued being deceived. And eventually, Derek would have found another victim to add to his collection. But I hadn't stayed silent. I'd fought back in the only way I knew how, with the truth. And that truth had been devastating and liberating in equal measure. I was at Maya's house. The Christmas dinner a year later, watching Emma and Jake play with their new toys. When my phone buzzed with a notification, someone had left a comment on my work blog, and the name caught my attention. Sarah Martinez. I read your article about speaking up against workplace harassment, the comment read. I wanted to thank you. I'm Derek Martinez's ex-wife. His first ex-wife, actually. He did the same thing to me that he did to your sister. I never had the courage to expose him. But seeing what you and Maya did gave me the strength to finally tell my story. I've started a support group for his victims. There are more of us than you know. I stared at the comment, my heart pounding. Derek had been married before Maya. He'd had a whole previous life that none of us had known about. And apparently, he'd been manipulating and abusing women for years. I showed the comment to Maya, who went pale. He was married before me. Apparently, what else don't we know about him? We found out over the next few months, as Sarah Martinez and her support group reached out to us. Derek had been married twice before Maya, and each marriage had ended the same way, with him getting caught cheating, manipulating the situation to make himself look like the victim, and moving on to the next woman. There were at least 12 women who'd been involved with Derek over the years, all of whom had been told variations of the same lies. Some had been co-workers, some had been friends of his wives, some had been random women he'd met at conferences or networking events. All of them had been manipulated, used, and discarded. When they'd outlived their usefulness. He's a serial predator, Sarah told us during one of our meetings. He targets women who are vulnerable, recently divorced, lonely, struggling with self-esteem issues. He love bombs them, makes them feel special, then slowly isolates them from their support systems. But why? Maya asked. What does he get out of it? Control, Sarah said. Power, the thrill of manipulation. Some people are just wired that way. We started a blog called Revenge Treats, documenting our experiences and providing resources for other women who'd been through similar situations. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It was about taking back our power, about refusing to be silent victims, about creating something positive from our pain. The blog grew quickly, attracting women from all over the country who'd been manipulated by men like Derek. We shared stories, provided support, and most importantly, we refused to be ashamed of what had happened to us. The best revenge. I wrote in one of our most popular posts, isn't getting even, it's getting free. It's refusing to let someone else's cruelty define your story. It's turning your pain into purpose and your trauma into triumph. Derek tried to sue us for defamation. His lawyer dropped the case when we provided evidence of his pattern of behavior. He tried to get the blog shut down. But we'd been careful to stick to the facts and avoid anything that could be construed as harassment. Eventually, he seemed to give up. Maybe he'd found new victims to focus on. Or maybe he'd finally realized that we weren't going to be silenced. Either way, the harassment stopped, and we were able to focus on helping other women, instead of defending ourselves. 2 years after that Christmas Eve confrontation, Jessica gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Maya and I were both at the hospital, holding Derek's daughter and marveling at the complicated beauty of the situation. This little girl would grow up knowing the truth about her father, But she'd also grow up surrounded by women who'd refuse to let his lies define their lives. "What are you going to name her?" Maya asked Jessica. "Hope," Jessica said. "Because that's what you two gave me. Hope that I could survive this. Hope that I could be a good mother despite everything. Hope that someday this would all make sense." I looked at this tiny baby, innocent and perfect, and thought about the future she'd grow up in. A future where her mother was strong and independent, where she'd be surrounded by women who'd learned to stand up for themselves, where she'd never have to wonder if she was worth fighting for. "She's beautiful," I said, and I meant it. 3 years later, Maya remarried. A kind, honest man who adored her and treated her children like his own. They had a small ceremony in their backyard, and I had the honor of being Maya's maid of honor. As I watched my sister dance with her new husband, I thought about how far we'd both come from that terrible Christmas Eve. Maya had found love again, real love built on honesty and respect. Jessica had built a successful life as a single mother, and her daughter was thriving. Sarah Martinez had turned her pain into purpose, helping dozens of other women escape similar situations, and me. I'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be complicit in someone else's lies. I'd learned that the truth, even when it's devastating, is always better than living a lie. I'd learned that revenge doesn't have to be about destruction, it can be about construction, about building something better from the ashes of what was broken. Derek eventually moved to another state, where he probably found new victims to manipulate. But we'd created a network of women who were watching, who were ready to speak up, who wouldn't let him operate in darkness anymore. That's the thing about men like Derek. They rely on isolation, on shame, on the silence of their victims. But when women start talking to each other, when we start sharing our stories and supporting each other, their power crumbles. The blog, Revenge Treats, now has over 100,000 followers, and we've helped countless women recognize the signs of manipulation and abuse. We've created a community of survivors who refuse to be defined by what was done to them. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm working on a new post or responding to a message from a woman who's just discovered her husband's secret life, I think about that Christmas Eve when Derek thought he could add me to his collection of victims. He thought he was the predator, and I was the prey. He thought he could manipulate me, control me, silence me. He thought he held all the power. He was wrong. The most satisfying revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about refusing to let them destroy you. It's about taking their weapon and turning it into your strength. It's about transforming your pain into purpose and your trauma into triumph. Derek Martinez tried to make me another victim in his long line of conquests. Instead, he created his own worst nightmare, a woman who refused to be silent, who refused to be ashamed, who refused to let him win. And in the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all. Maya and I still host Christmas at her house every year. The kids are older now. Emma's in middle school and Jake's in high school. They know the truth about their father, age appropriately, and they've learned valuable lessons about honesty, respect, and standing up for what's right. Sometimes I catch Maya looking at me across the dinner table, and I know she's thinking about that Christmas Eve when everything changed, when I could have stayed silent but chose to speak up, when I could have looked the other way but chose to fight back. "Thank you," she mouthed, and I'll nod, knowing that she's not just thanking me for exposing Derek's lies. She's thanking me for loving her enough to tell her the truth, even when it was painful. She's thanking me for refusing to let her live in a world built on deception. And I'm grateful. Too grateful that I found the courage to speak up. Grateful that Maya had the strength to listen. Grateful that we were able to turn our pain into something that could help other women. Because that's what real revenge looks like. It's not about destruction or cruelty or evening the score. It's about refusing to let someone else's darkness define your light. It's about taking back your power and using it to build something better. It's about turning your story from one of victimization into one of triumph. And that, more than any act of cruelty or destruction, is the most satisfying revenge of all. Have you ever been betrayed by the people closest to you? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it.